When we try to understand why a narcissist engages in intimate relationships with such apparent indiscrimination, we first have to fundamentally reframe what intimacy actually means to them. Because if we assume they are operating from the same psychological framework as someone capable of genuine connection, we will never truly understand the pattern and will be perpetually confused by choices that seem self-destructive, reckless, or simply inexplicable. The key insight is this: for the narcissist, physical intimacy is not an expression of connection, desire, or mutual attraction. It is a transaction. It is a means to an end. And once you understand what ends they are trying to achieve, the indiscriminate nature of their behavior suddenly makes perfect sense. Let me explain what I mean by transaction. When most people engage intimately with another person, there is a complex interplay of factors at play. Genuine attraction to that specific individual, emotional connection or the desire for it, mutual vulnerability, the sharing of pleasure, the creation of intimacy. The person truly matters. Their specific qualities, their particular presence, who they are as an individual. All of this is central to the entire experience. But the narcissist is operating from an entirely different framework altogether. They are seeking something that any number of different people could easily provide. They are not looking for you specifically. They are looking for what you can do for them in that exact moment. And what they are seeking varies quite a bit, but it generally falls into several distinct categories: validation, control, regulation of their internal state, or proof of their overall desirability and personal power. Think carefully about what this means in practical terms. If intimacy is about obtaining validation, about proving to themselves that they are attractive, wanted, and desirable, then the specific person becomes almost irrelevant. What matters most is that someone said yes, someone chose them, someone found them compelling enough to be intimate with, and that person could be anyone, as long as they fulfill that validating function. If intimacy is about exerting control, about demonstrating their power to seduce, to possess, and to have access to another person's body and vulnerability, then again, the specific individual does not matter in the slightest. What matters is the exercise of power itself, the proof that they can make something happen, that they can override someone's boundaries or better judgment. If intimacy is about regulating an internal state, providing temporary relief from emptiness, anxiety, or internal fragmentation, then it is functioning almost like a drug. And when you are seeking a pharmaceutical effect, you do not develop a relationship with the substance. You just need it to work. The narcissist in this mode is seeking sensation, distraction, and a temporary sense of being real and embodied. Any person who can provide that specific experience will do. This transactional framework explains something that often profoundly baffles partners of narcissists: the shocking lack of standards or selectivity. You might discover that the person your narcissistic partner was intimate with is someone they themselves describe as unattractive, unintelligent, or otherwise lacking. Then you think, why would they risk our relationship for that person? Why would they choose someone who is clearly not as accomplished, attractive, or interesting as I am? But you are still thinking in terms of choice based on genuine preference. The narcissist is not choosing based on who the person actually is. They are choosing based on sheer availability, opportunity, and whether that person can fulfill their immediate function. It is not all that different from someone who is extremely hungry, eating whatever food happens to be available. You do not develop elaborate culinary preferences when you are simply trying to fill a sudden void. This is also why narcissists can maintain multiple intimate relationships simultaneously without any apparent internal conflict. For someone capable of genuine connection, this would create immense cognitive and emotional dissonance. How do you reconcile intimate connection with multiple people? How do you manage the competing emotional investments? How do you navigate the intense ethical complexity? But for the narcissist, there is no dissonance, because there is no real connection. Each person is simply fulfilling a function, providing a form of supply, and serving a specific purpose. They can compartmentalize easily because they are not emotionally invested in any of these people as whole individuals. They are engaging strictly with what these people can do for them, not with who these people are. This transactional nature also explains the narcissist's ability to be intimate with people they do not even particularly like. You might discover they were involved with someone they openly criticized, someone they found annoying, or someone whose company they did not even enjoy outside of the intimate context. And this seems utterly incomprehensible until you realize they were not relating to that person at all. They were just using that person's body and availability to meet a need that had nothing to do with the person themselves. It is a profoundly objectifying way of relating, though the narcissist would rarely recognize it as such. They might even convince themselves they are experiencing genuine attraction or connection in the moment because they have learned to perform the appearance of these feelings convincingly. But there is no depth beneath the performance, and no genuine regard for the other person's subjectivity, their experience, or their humanity beyond what they can provide. And this is why any currency works for them. The narcissist does not need gold. They will take whatever is available because they are not actually seeking treasure. They are seeking to fill a register, to make a transaction, and to obtain something that anyone with the requisite anatomy and availability can easily provide. The person is entirely incidental to the function. When intimacy is divorced from connection, anyone becomes replaceable because you were never seeking a person in the first place. But the transactional nature of the narcissist's intimate encounters points to something even more psychologically revealing. Because while intimacy serves various functions for them, one of the primary functions is the accumulation of evidence in an ongoing internal case. They are trying to build the case for their own desirability, their power, and their significance. The narcissist, remember, has no stable internal sense of worth and no coherent self-esteem that exists independent of external validation. They are constantly, exhaustingly, trying to prove to themselves that they matter, that they are special, and that they are worthy of attention and desire. And every single intimate encounter becomes a piece of evidence in this ongoing case. This is why the numbers matter to them in a way that seems almost adolescent. They might keep mental tallies, might reference their body count with a kind of quiet pride, and might collect intimate encounters the way some people collect achievements or trophies. If you are thinking about intimacy purely as connection, this seems bizarre and frankly pathetic. But if you understand it as evidence gathering, it makes perfect sense. Each person who says yes to them, who finds them attractive enough to be intimate with, and who gives them access, this all becomes undeniable proof. Proof that they are desirable, proof that they have power, and proof that they can attract, seduce, and possess. The actual experience of the encounter is almost secondary to what it represents in their ongoing effort to construct a sense of significance. This is why the conquest matters so much more than the connection. In fact, a real connection would almost interfere with what they are seeking. Real connection would require vulnerability, reciprocity, and the very real possibility of being rejected for who they actually are. But conquest, the ability to make something happen, to override hesitation, and to successfully seduce, That is pure validation with zero risk of genuine exposure. Watch how the narcissist talks about their intimate experiences when they are being unguarded. Often there is a quality of collection and acquisition rather than genuine enthusiasm about the person or the experience. They will talk about having someone, closing the deal, or being able to get anyone they want. The language itself reveals what is actually happening psychologically. These are possessions, achievements, and notches in a belt, rather than relationships with human beings. And this is where the indiscriminate quality becomes particularly important, because it is not just that anyone will do. It is that the more varied, the more numerous, and the more impressive the collection, the more convincing the internal evidence becomes. If the narcissist can attract people of different types, different demographics, and different levels of conventional attractiveness or social status, this proves their universal desirability. They are not just attractive to one specific type, they are attractive to everyone. There is also an element of compulsive proving that happens here, because the narcissist's internal emptiness is constant. Their need for validation is completely insatiable. One encounter does not actually fill the void or resolve the fundamental question of their worth, so they need another and another and another. Each provides a temporary sense of being desired, being powerful, and being significant, but it fades almost immediately, requiring the next quick fix. This is why narcissists can be intimate with someone and then immediately begin pursuing the next person. It is not that the first encounter was unsatisfying in any conventional sense. It is simply that it did not actually resolve the underlying existential crisis that drove them to it in the first place. The emptiness returns. The question of their worth resurfaces quickly, and they need more evidence, more proof, and more validation. Think about how different this is from how most people experience intimate relationships. For someone capable of genuine connection, intimacy creates a sense of closeness, satisfaction, and perhaps even a period where they feel emotionally full and do not need to seek validation elsewhere. The encounter nourishes something within them, at least temporarily. But for the narcissist, each encounter is like trying to fill a bucket with a massive hole in the bottom. It might look full for a fleeting moment, but the emptiness returns immediately because nothing external can ever truly address the deep internal deficit they are trying to remedy. So they remain in constant pursuit, constantly needing to prove their desirability, and constantly seeking evidence that never quite convinces them for long. This also explains why narcissists often pursue people who are already in relationships, who are seemingly unavailable, or who initially reject them. Because if they can successfully seduce someone who is committed elsewhere, someone who said no, or someone who is supposed to be unattainable, that is even more compelling evidence of their ultimate power and desirability. The difficulty of the conquest makes the validation far more potent. It is not about the person at all. It is about what successfully seducing that person proves about the narcissist. And this is why they can be so persistent and so willing to invest time and energy into pursuits that seem completely disproportionate. They are not pursuing a relationship. They are pursuing absolute proof. There is something profoundly sad about this when you really sit with it. Because what the narcissist is seeking, proof of their worth and evidence of their desirability, can never actually be obtained through these encounters. External validation cannot resolve an internal deficit. No amount of people saying yes can fill the void left by a lack of a coherent sense of self. So they remain trapped in this compulsive cycle, collecting evidence that never quite convinces them, accumulating encounters that provide momentary relief but no lasting sense of worth, and pursuing validation that evaporates as soon as it is obtained. And the people they are intimate with are not really there as full human beings in the narcissist's experience. They are witnesses, validators, and evidence. Their subjectivity, their own desires and vulnerabilities, and their humanity, all of this is entirely peripheral to their function in the narcissist's psychological economy. This is perhaps the most dehumanizing aspect of the narcissist's indiscriminate intimacy. Not just that they will be intimate with anyone, but that in being intimate with anyone, they are not truly intimate with anyone at all. Every encounter is fundamentally about themselves, about their need for validation, and about their compulsive effort to prove something to themselves that cannot ever be proven through another person's body. When you are using intimacy to prove your worth, everyone becomes mere evidence and no one becomes real. But there is another dimension to the narcissist's indiscriminate, intimate behavior that goes even deeper than validation seeking or evidence gathering. And this one touches on something far more visceral and desperate: the narcissist's profound disconnection from their own body and their experience of an internal void that is almost unbearable in its emptiness. Let me explain what I mean by this, because it gets to something fundamental about the narcissist's relationship with physical sensation itself. The narcissist exists in a chronic state of what we might call dissociation, which is a deep disconnection from their authentic self, their genuine feelings, and their embodied experience. Their entire psychological structure is organized around avoiding contact with a core self they experience as defective or worthless. But this defense of dissociation comes at a tremendous cost. They are cut off from the felt sense of being real, of being alive, and of inhabiting their own body in any grounded way. This creates an experience of emptiness that is difficult for those of us who do not live with it to fully comprehend. It is not just emotional emptiness, though that is certainly there. It is a kind of existential void, a sense of not quite existing, of watching life happen from behind a glass wall rather than actually living it. The narcissist simply goes through the motions, performs emotions, and acts out what seems appropriate, but there is very little authentic felt experience underneath. And this is where physical intimacy enters as a particular kind of solution, however temporary it might be, because intimacy, at least in the moment, provides something the narcissist desperately needs: sensation intense enough to break through the dissociation, physical touch, arousal, and the overwhelming nature of an intimate encounter. These create moments where the narcissist actually feels something, where they are anchored in their body, and where they experience themselves as present and real. It is not unlike the way some people use other intense physical experiences to feel alive, such as extreme sports, physical pain, or high-risk behavior. The intensity of the sensation cuts through the numbness, provides temporary relief from the emptiness, and creates a brief sense of being embodied and actual. And here is the critical point. If this is what you are seeking from intimacy, not connection with another person, but relief from your own inner void, then the person becomes completely irrelevant. You are not looking for someone. You are looking for pure sensation. You are looking for an experience intense enough to make you feel real for just a moment. This explains something that often shocks partners when they discover the full extent of the narcissist's indiscriminate behavior. The encounters are often completely mechanical, devoid of any genuine passion or even actual pleasure. The narcissist might be intimate with someone and seem utterly disconnected during the experience, going through motions that look more compulsive than pleasurable, because they are not really seeking pleasure in any conventional sense. They are seeking the sensation of feeling something, anything that breaks through the chronic numbness of their dissociated existence. And that sensation can come from intimacy with anyone. It does not require attraction, connection, or even basic regard for the other person. This also explains the often compulsive and addictive quality of the narcissist's intimate behavior. Like any other attempt to manage an internal void through external means, it provides temporary relief, but no lasting solution. The sensation fades, the dissociation returns, the emptiness reasserts itself. And so they need another encounter, another moment of feeling real, and another temporary reprieve from the unbearable experience of being cut off from themselves. There is a tragic quality to this when you really understand it. The narcissist is essentially using other people's bodies as a form of self-medication, trying to treat a profound psychological wound through physical sensation. And it does not work. It simply cannot work. Because the problem is not a lack of physical stimulation. It is a fundamental disconnection from the self that no amount of external experience can ever remedy. And the people they are using in this way are not partners, nor are they really participants in a shared experience. They are instruments, vehicles for sensation, and a means of temporarily escaping the void. The narcissist might perform interest in them and might say things that sound intimate or connected, but the internal reality is one of profound aloneness. Even in the most physically intimate moments, the narcissist is completely alone with their own desperate attempt to feel real. This is also why the encounters can be so varied in nature and so indiscriminate in terms of context or circumstance. The narcissist might engage in ways that seem random, impulsive, or even self-sabotaging. They might pursue intimacy at completely inappropriate times, in risky situations, with people who are clearly unsuitable. None of this makes any sense if you think they are seeking pleasure or connection. Pero it makes perfect sense if you understand they are seeking relief from an internal state that is becoming unbearable. The compulsive quality often intensifies during periods when the narcissist's defenses are particularly strained, when they are facing failure, loss, or circumstances that threaten their grandiose self-image. The void becomes much more intense. The dissociation becomes more pronounced, and the need for sensation that can cut through it becomes far more desperate. This is why you sometimes see escalating patterns of increasingly indiscriminate behavior during times of stress or instability in the narcissist's life. There is also a way in which this use of intimacy to manage the void becomes cyclical and self-perpetuating. Each impulsive encounter, each indiscriminate choice, and each moment of using another person as an anesthetic deepens the narcissist's disconnection from any possibility of genuine intimacy, reinforcing the pattern of relating to others as objects rather than subjects. It makes the authentic connection that might actually address the underlying emptiness less and less accessible. So, the narcissist becomes trapped in a pattern where the very behavior they are using to escape the void actually ensures they remain firmly trapped in it. They are seeking to feel real through encounters that require them to remain fundamentally disconnected from genuine feeling. They are trying to escape emptiness through experiences that can only provide temporary sensation, never actual fulfillment. And all the while, they are moving through a series of human beings who believe they are engaging in something mutual, something shared, and perhaps even something meaningful, never knowing they are merely serving as a temporary anesthetic for someone else's existential crisis. When you are using another person's body to feel momentarily real, anyone with a pulse becomes sufficient because you are not seeking them. You are simply fleeing yourself. Now, we have talked about why the narcissist engages indiscriminately from their own internal perspective, looking at the transactional nature, the validation seeking, and the attempt to escape the void. But we need to address something much darker and more strategic. When the narcissist is in a primary relationship with you, their indiscriminate, intimate behavior serves another crucial function. It becomes a weapon, a tool of control and devaluation that is all the more effective precisely because of how indiscriminate it truly is. Let me be very clear about this because it is one of the most psychologically devastating aspects of being in a relationship with a narcissist. The lower they set their standards with others, the more it communicates to you that you are not special, that you are easily replaced, and that your commitment, your loyalty, and your sacrifice do not mean a single thing. Think about what happens when you discover your narcissistic partner has been intimate with someone you perceive as clearly less than you in various ways. Someone less attractive, less accomplished, less interesting, or less of whatever qualities you believed made you valuable to your partner in the first place. Your first response might be profound confusion. Why would they risk our relationship for that person? Why would they choose someone so obviously inferior? But you are still thinking this is about choice based on preference. You are still operating from the assumption that your partner's intimate behavior reflects genuine desire or attraction. And that is exactly what makes the devaluation so effective. Because what the narcissist is actually communicating through their indiscriminate behavior is this: you are not special. Everything you thought made you valuable to me, your depth, your loyalty, and your personal qualities, none of that matters at all. I will be intimate with anyone, regardless of their qualities, which means your qualities are completely irrelevant. You could be anyone, and anyone else could be you.